Hi.
I never thought I'd be the guy writing one of these. You always hear about it happening to other people, on TV, in movies, on Reddit, but never to you. Never in a million years. But here I am. I found out my wife, Beth, was cheating on me in the most cliché way possible, her phone. It was a normal Tuesday night. Beth was in the shower, her phone buzzing on the nightstand. I wasn't the type to snoop, but something in my gut told me to look. I ignored it at first, but then it buzzed again. And again. Curiosity got the best of me. I grabbed the phone. A message preview flashed on the screen. It was from someone named Jay. Can't wait to see you again. Last night was amazing. Hope he doesn't suspect a thing. Red heart. I felt like my stomach had been ripped out. My hands were shaking as I unlocked her phone. Yeah, I knew her passcode, and clearly, she didn't think she needed to change it. That's how sure she was that I'd never check. I opened the messages. Hundreds of texts. Flirty, intimate, disgusting. Beth had been sneaking around with a guy named Justin. A guy I actually knew. Justin was married. His wife, Nicole, Nikki, as people called her, was someone I'd met a few times. Sweet woman, quiet but strong. And apparently, just as clueless as I had been. I wanted to scream, to punch something, to wake Beth up right there and make her confess. But I didn't. I needed to be smart. I needed to figure out what to do next. I took screenshots, forwarded them to my own phone, and deleted the evidence from hers. Then I placed the phone back on the nightstand like nothing had happened. That was the longest night of my life. The next day, I called in sick to work. I couldn't sit at a desk and pretend my whole world wasn't crumbling. Instead, I drove to Nikki's workplace. She worked at a small boutique downtown. I walked in, trying to figure out how to start this impossible conversation. She looked up, surprised to see me. Hey, what are you doing here? I hesitated. Can we talk? It's about Justin. The moment I said his name, her face changed. Like she knew. Maybe not everything, but something. She nodded, grabbed her coat, and led me outside. It had started to drizzle. We walked to a quiet spot by the parking lot, and I just handed her my phone. I'm sorry, but you need to see this. She scrolled through the texts. Her fingers trembled. Then she let out a breath like she'd been punched in the gut. She turned away, her back to me. I heard her whisper, "That bastard." Then, to my surprise, she laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was bitter, sharp. "This is insane," she muttered. I had a feeling, but I never had proof. I didn't know what to say. I just stood there, watching the rain start to pick up, feeling like my whole world had tilted. Then she turned to me, eyes burning. "They think they can play us? Make us look like idiots?" I nodded slowly. A wicked smile crossed her face. "Then let's play back." And that's how it started. After Nikki and I had that rain-soaked revelation, we sat in her car, staring out at the empty parking lot. Neither of us spoke for a while. The weight of it all just hung in the air between us. I think we were both waiting for the other to break down first. But neither of us did. Instead, Nikki exhaled sharply, wiped her face, and said, "All right, what do we do?" That snapped me out of it. "What do you mean?" She turned to face me, eyes still burning with anger. "We can't just sit on this. We have proof. They don't know we know. That gives us the upper hand." I nodded slowly. "So what do you suggest?" She thought for a moment. "We need more. This is bad, but they could try to explain it away. Say it was a joke, or harmless flirting, or whatever." She clenched her jaw. "We need something undeniable." She was right. If we were going to do this, we had to do it right. That night, I went home to Beth like nothing had changed. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. She kissed my cheek when I walked in, smiling like she wasn't sleeping with another man. "Hey, babe. How was your day?" I forced myself to smile. Good. Just work stuff. She nodded, then went back to scrolling on her phone. Maybe texting him. I had to look away before I said something I'd regret. The next day, Nikki and I met up at a coffee shop, sitting in a corner booth, whispering like we were the ones having an affair. She had already done some digging. Justin's been acting weird for a while. I checked his credit card statements. Hotel charges, expensive dinners, ones I wasn't at. I even found a charge for a lingerie store, and trust me, he hasn't bought me anything new in years. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Beth's been working late a lot. Says she's exhausted when she gets home. Won't even look me in the eye some days. Nikki shook her head. They're so stupid. So predictable. She pulled out a small notebook, flipping to a page with scribbled notes. I started tracking his movements. He tells me he's going to the gym every Wednesday night. I checked his location history on Google. He's not at the gym. He's at some random address across town. I blinked. You have his Google location? She gave me a tight smirk. Men aren't as careful as they think. It hit me then. Nikki was sharp, focused. While I had been sitting in shock, she had already moved into action. Think it's her place? I asked. Maybe. She tapped the page with her pen. But if not, we'll find out soon enough. I nodded. I'll start checking Beth's car mileage. If she's going somewhere secret, it'll show. We sat there, finishing our coffee in silence, both deep in thought. Then Nikki looked up at me. You okay? I forced a smile. Not really. She nodded. Me neither. We were two broken people, but at least we weren't alone in this. And that was the moment I knew, this wasn't just about catching them. This was about making them pay. For the next week, Nikki and I worked in secret, gathering every little piece of evidence we could. It was like we were spies in our own marriages. I started tracking Beth's car mileage. Every night, I checked the odometer before bed and again in the morning. Sure enough, on Wednesday night, the numbers jumped more than they should have. She wasn't working late, she was driving somewhere. Meanwhile, Nikki kept checking Justin's Google location. He was always at that mystery address on Wednesdays. We needed to see it for ourselves. The following Wednesday, Nikki and I met up in a grocery store parking lot near the address. It was drizzling again. Seemed like rain just followed us these days. You ready for this? She asked, pulling her hood up. I wasn't. But I nodded. Let's go. We took my car, parking a few houses down from the address. It was a small, run-down place, looked like an old rental. The lights were on inside. Then, right on schedule, Beth's car pulled up. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. She sat in the car for a minute, probably checking for any texts from me, then stepped out and walked up to the door. Justin opened it. I could barely see his face, but the way he pulled her inside, the way they kissed right there in the doorway before closing the door behind them. Something inside me snapped. Nikki saw it too. I heard her take a sharp breath, her nails digging into her palms. That's it, she whispered. We have them. I pulled out my phone and started recording. The video wasn't much, just Beth's car parked out front, her walking into the house, Justin greeting her. But it was enough. Enough to prove she had been lying. Enough to start the next phase. Nikki turned to me, her voice ice cold. We're not done yet. We need more. I swallowed my anger. She was right. We had to end this the right way. So we waited. An hour later, they came out. Beth's hair was messy. She was laughing at something he said. Laughing. Like she wasn't ripping my heart out. Nikki didn't say a word. She just kept recording. As soon as they drove off in separate cars, she looked at me. Next step. I exhaled, still gripping the wheel. We get inside that house. Nikki smirked. Now you're thinking like me. After seeing them together, I didn't sleep. I just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling while Beth curled up next to me, completely unaware. She even mumbled, love you, in her sleep. I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. Or screaming. The next day, Nikki and I met up again. This time, we weren't just spying. We were going in. The house Beth and Justin had been sneaking off to wasn't theirs. It was a rental. And rentals? They usually had spare keys. Nikki had already done some digging. Turns out, Justin had rented the place under a fake name. She found it listed on a rental site, one of those short-term lease setups. Probably so he could keep it off his official records. He's not as smart as he thinks, Nikki muttered as we stood outside the house that evening. No lights. No cars. No signs of life. This is crazy, I said, my pulse pounding. No, Nikki corrected. This is justice. She pulled a bobby pin from her pocket and crouched by the door. I blinked. You know how to pick a lock? She gave me a look. You don't. Fair point. A minute later, there was a soft click, and the door creaked open. We were in. The place was small, barely furnished. Like a cheap motel but slightly less depressing. It wasn't a love nest. It was a hideout. We moved carefully, flipping on lights, searching for anything useful. Then we found it. A hidden camera. Right there, tucked between a stack of books on the shelf. Nikki and I exchanged a look. What are the chances they were stupid enough to leave footage on here? I whispered. Let's find out. She grabbed the tiny SD card from the camera and slipped it into her phone with an adapter. A few seconds later, she sucked in a breath. Oh my God. She turned the screen toward me. The video was dated 3 weeks ago. It showed Beth and Justin. Together. In this room. There was no more doubt. No more guessing. No more excuses they could use. We had them. And we were just getting started. Nikki and I sat in my car, parked a few blocks away, staring at the screen. Neither of us spoke. We just watched. Beth and Justin, tangled up in each other. Kissing. Laughing. Whispering things I couldn't hear, but I didn't need to. I already knew. Nikki's grip on her phone was so tight I thought she'd crack the screen. Then, finally, she exhaled. They recorded themselves. In a rental house. On a hidden camera. She let out a humorless laugh. Are they actually this stupid? I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. Guess so. She turned to me, her eyes cold and sharp. We could ruin them with this. I met her gaze. Yeah, we could. For the next few days, Nikki and I planned carefully. We had proof, but if we wanted revenge, we had to be smart about how we used it. We listed out our goals. Expose them. No way were they walking away from this unscathed. Control the damage. We weren't about to let them twist the narrative. Ensure smooth divorces. No messy legal battles. No fights over money. Just done. But then Nikki hit me with something unexpected. Justin's been hiding something, she said, tossing a folder onto the table between us. I frowned. What do you mean? She leaned in. I checked his financials. Well, the ones I have access to. Some of his money is missing. Missing. She nodded. Transferred into different accounts. Large sums. Regularly. It took me a second to put it together. You think he's committing fraud? Nikki smirked. I think Justin's about to have a really bad week. I sat back, running a hand through my hair. This was getting bigger than I expected. But maybe that wasn't a bad thing. Maybe it was exactly what we needed. That night, I lay next to Beth in bed, listening to her breathe. I knew she'd texted Justin earlier. I'd seen her hide her phone when I walked in. I clenched my fists under the blanket. She thought she was safe. She thought I was blind. She had no idea that her entire world was about to collapse. By the time Nikki and I were ready to make our move, I wasn't even angry anymore. I was calm. Because when you have the upper hand, you don't waste energy on rage. You just watch them fall. Step 1. The anonymous package. Nikki and I compiled everything. Screenshots of texts, photos, the video footage from the rental house. Then we printed them out, neatly organized them into 2 identical folders, and sealed them in plain envelopes. One was addressed to Beth's boss. The other? Justin's employer. See, Beth had been angling for a promotion at work, bragging about how she was finally getting recognized for her dedication. And Justin? Well, Nikki had done some digging. Turns out, he wasn't just committing fraud, he was skimming money from his own company. The best part? The rental house was paid for using company funds. All we had to do was send the proof to the right people and let the dominoes fall. Step 2. The public exposure. Nikki had access to Justin's family group chat. Apparently, he never changed his passwords, and she had them saved from years ago. We drafted a message. Hey everyone, just wanted to share some recent updates about Justin and Beth. Thought you'd like to know what they've been up to behind closed doors. See the attachments. And then, we attached everything. The texts, the pictures, the video stills. Then we hit send. 5 minutes later, Nikki's phone exploded with messages. Her mother-in-law, tell me this isn't real. His sister, what the hell, Justin? His dad, calls 3 times in a row. Justin was screwed. Step 3. The confrontation. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, drinking my coffee like it was just another day. Beth came downstairs, scrolling on her phone, completely unaware. Then her phone dinged. And another. And another. And another. She frowned, tapping the screen. I watched her face as she froze. Her eyes went wide. Her breathing went shallow. Then she spun to look at me. Did you? I set my coffee down. Come. Unshaken. Morning, Beth, I said. Sleep well. Her hands trembled. How did you? I tilted my head. How did I what? Her phone rang. She flinched. Then she grabbed it and ran upstairs. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. Because this was just the beginning. Beth locked herself in the bedroom for almost an hour. I just sat downstairs, sipping my coffee, scrolling through my phone like nothing was happening. Then, finally, she came storming down the stairs. Her face was pale, eyes red, hands shaking. What did you do? She hissed. I raised an eyebrow. Me? I didn't do anything, Beth. But it looks like you did. She threw her phone onto the table. My boss just called. I lost my promotion. They're talking about an investigation. Something about misconduct. Did you send them something? I leaned back in my chair. Maybe. Maybe not. But if you're innocent, why are you so worried? She let out a frustrated noise, pacing back and forth. This is insane. This is insane. I stayed silent, just watching. Then she pointed a shaking finger at me. You have no idea what you've done. You're ruining my life over one mistake. I let out a short laugh. One mistake? Beth, it wasn't one mistake. It was months of lying, sneaking, sleeping with him behind my back while coming home to me like nothing happened. Her lips trembled. I was going to tell you. That made me laugh harder. Oh, really? When? Before or after your next business meeting with Justin? She had nothing. Her mouth opened, then shut. Her eyes darted toward the door, like she was thinking of running. Then her phone buzzed again. She grabbed it, checked the screen, and went white. I knew who it was before she even said a word. Justin. And if things were going this bad for Beth, they were going worse for him. Meanwhile, at Nikki's house, I got a text from Nikki around noon. It's happening. Justin's life was collapsing. His job, gone. His family, blowing up his phone. His bank accounts, under scrutiny. And Nikki? She was sitting back, watching it all unfold with the coldest satisfaction I'd ever seen. I FaceTimed her. She answered with a smirk. "Guess who just called crying?" I chuckled. "Justin." She nodded. "Yep. Begging me to fix this. Saying it's all a misunderstanding. That I'm overreacting." I rolled my eyes. "They always say that when they get caught." Nicky grinned. "Oh, and guess what else? His parents kicked him out. He's officially homeless." I let out a low whistle. That was fast. "Oh, it gets better." Nicky leaned closer to the camera. "His company's lawyers called me. Apparently, someone tipped them off about his shady finances." I smirked. "Someone?" She winked. "Let's just say a concerned wife found some very interesting bank transfers." I let out a breath. This was huge. Justin wasn't just losing his marriage. He was looking at potential fraud charges. And Beth? She had no idea what was coming next. But she would soon. Because Nicky and we were far from done. Beth was spiraling. After our little morning chat, she spent the rest of the day glued to her phone, making frantic calls. To her boss. To her friends. To Justin. I didn't stop her. I just sat on the couch, flipping through channels, pretending I wasn't listening. Then, around 5 p.m., she finally lost it. She stormed into the living room, phone in hand, eyes wild. "You need to fix this." I raised an eyebrow. "Fix what?" She threw her arms up. "My job. My reputation. My life." I let out a slow breath. "Beth, you did this to yourself." She shook her head. "No. You set me up. You sent those messages. You made me look like some horrible person." I cut her off, standing up. "Beth, you are a horrible person." That shut her up real quick. I stepped closer, my voice calm but firm. "You lied to me. 4 months. You let me believe we had a happy marriage while you were sneaking off with Justin." Her bottom lip trembled. I didn't mean to." I scoffed. "Oh, don't even try that." Her face crumpled. For a second, I thought she might actually start crying. Then her phone rang. She glanced at the screen, hesitated, then answered. "Justin." I crossed my arms, watching her face as she listened. Her eyes went wide. Then, panic. "What? No, they can't do that." I tilted my head. "Something wrong." She didn't answer me. Just turned away, gripping her forehead, listening to whatever Justin was saying. Then she slowly sank onto the couch. "Oh my God," she whispered. I smirked. "I take it Justin told you the good news?" She finally looked up, voice barely above a whisper. "His company is pressing charges." Bingo. I sat back down across from her. "Yeah. Turns out, stealing from your own job isn't the best idea." "Who knew?" She stared at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. Like I was a stranger. And maybe I was. Because the old me would have never done this. But she killed that version of me the moment she decided I wasn't enough. Beth swallowed hard. I didn't know about the money stuff." I shrugged. "Doesn't matter. You still picked him." Her face twisted. "I didn't pick him." I leaned forward. "You did. Every time you met him at that house. Every time you texted him good night instead of me. Every time you let him touch you." She opened her mouth, then shut it. Because she knew I was right. And finally, I saw it. The realization. The regret. The crushing weight of everything she had thrown away. She looked at me, voice breaking. "Is there any way to fix this?" I stared at her for a long moment. Then I stood up, grabbed my car keys, and headed for the door. "No, Beth. There isn't." And then I left her sitting there, alone, in the mess she made. I didn't go far. Just drove to a gas station parking lot and sat there, gripping the wheel. My phone buzzed. Nikki, it's done. He's arrested. I exhaled, staring at the message. It was happening. The end of this whole mess was finally here. I called her. She picked up on the first ring. Justin's in custody? I asked. Yep, she said, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. His company pressed charges. He tried to call me earlier, but I blocked him. I chuckled. He really thought you'd help him? She snorted. Men like him always think they can talk their way out of things. She paused. What about Beth? I glanced at my phone screen. 6 missed calls, 3 unread messages. She's panicking, I said. Trying to fix everything. But it's too late. Good, Nikki said. I could hear something in her voice, like she was lighter. Like all the weight she had been carrying was finally lifting. How are you feeling? I asked. She exhaled. Honestly, the best I've felt in months. When I finally went home, the house was quiet. Beth was on the couch, knees pulled to her chest, staring at the floor. I didn't say anything. Just walked past her toward the bedroom. Then she whispered, "Are you really leaving me?" I stopped in the hallway but didn't turn around. "Yeah," I said. "I am." Silence. Then a choked sob. I kept walking. The next morning, I handed her the divorce papers. She didn't fight. Didn't argue. Just signed them with shaky hands, tears dripping onto the page. I took them and walked out the door. And just like that, I was free. Nikki and I met for coffee later that afternoon. We didn't say much, just sat there, letting the weight of everything settle. Then she smirked. So, what now? I thought for a second. Then I smiled. Whatever we want. And for the first time in a long time, that felt damn good. A week later, Beth was gone from my life. She moved out of the house, our house, but I didn't feel like it was ours anymore. It was just a place where I had been lied to. A place full of memories that didn't mean anything anymore. I let her take whatever she wanted. I didn't care. The only thing I needed was my freedom. She tried to call a few times, but I never answered. One night, I got a text from her. "I miss you. I don't know how to fix this, but I hate myself for what I did. I wish I could take it all back." I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it. Nikki and I kept in touch. We had been through too much together not to. But we weren't trying to be something more. That wasn't what this was. One night, we met up at a bar. Just 2 people, drinking, talking about life. "You ever think about dating again?" she asked, swirling the last sip of her whiskey. I shrugged. "Not now. Maybe someday." She nodded. "Same." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then she smirked. "I gotta say, though, watching them fall, that was fun." I laughed. "Yeah, it really was." She raised her glass. "To revenge." I clinked mine against hers. "To moving on." And for the first time in a long, long time, I actually meant it.
Goodbye.